If you're a person of a certain age, you may remember a set of books by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone called Fighting Fantasy. These books gave you a fantasy yarn that you got to shape by choosing multiple options with some dice-based RNG for good measure. They were the analogue Baldur's Gate 3 of their day. Roadwarden is the digital spiritual successor to these adventure-based books that puts you in the shoes of a fantasy-based postman. Sounds strange? Well, stick around, as I bet you probably haven't played a game quite like this before. The story of Roadwarden is fairly simple in its premise. You act as the titular Roadwarden, a jack of all trades who is sent by the Merchant Guild to scout out a secluded peninsula to re-establish trade routes. Your job description is pretty broad. You're expected to secure the roads between settlements, protect fellow travellers, support merchants and confront threats like bandits, necromancers and the hostile beasts that roam the land. You're also tasked with finding out what happened to your predecessor who seemingly disappeared without a trace. However, your role is much more about tact and diplomacy as it is fighting threats. The story does a great job of establishing a meaningful political and religious system that the world runs on. When talking to the many varied inhabitants of the peninsula, you have to tread lightly, be mindful of their beliefs and do your best to appeal to their wants and needs while keeping one eye on your own goals. The story in itself is engrossing, but the writing is truly excellent. It's just descriptive enough to give your imagination a nudge in the right direction. You can easily conjure up images of the locations and characters without being bogged down by overly frilly language. If you watch my recent review of Triangle Strategy, you'll know that more writing doesn't equal better. Roadwarden nails the story side of things. The world building and immersion is off the scale good. Gameplay in Roadwarden is a tranquil, deliberate affair. It isn't about adrenaline, it's about decisions. Unlike other games where the story runs parallel to the gameplay and you can choose to pay it no mind, the story in Roadwarden is the game. After naming your character, you get to choose one of three classes: fighter, mage or scholar, each providing unique skills and approaches to challenges. You also have the opportunity to shape your character's background, personality and personal goals, further influencing the story and available options. Completing quests and interacting with factions affect your reputation, leading to discounts, new quests and access to new areas. The core gameplay loop sees you exploring the peninsula on your faithful steed and progressing along the map in small chunks. In these bite-sized areas you'll find different buildings to explore, obstacles to overcome, enemies to fight or not, and characters to interact with. You can engage in some really in-depth conversations with a wide variety of NPCs. Your choices in dialogue, including your character's attitude, friendly, intimidating, etc., shape your relationships and affect how NPCs perceive you and interact with you. These interactions are crucial for gathering information, taking on quests and influencing the game's narrative. It's vital to take in as much info as you can, as some of it will be used to solve the game's many puzzles and quests. Luckily, you don't have to memorise everything because the game keeps a log of your conversations and also gives you a handy journal where you can write any useful bits of gossip you come across. This loop of discovery, conversation and solution kinda reminds me of a text-based Zelda game. In the Zelda franchise you usually come to an area where you can't progress any further, but after finding the right tool the path opens up to you. Roadwarden operates on a similar system. It's really satisfying when a random NPC casually drops a vital bit of info that helps you to progress. Chatting to the locals is not the only thing you can do in Roadwarden. The game also puts a fair emphasis on survival, requiring you to manage your character's vitality, nourishment, armour and currency. You'll need to purchase food, supplies and lodgings, and decisions about how you spend your resources have consequences for your character and progression. Time is arguably the most critical resource though, as you have a limited amount to complete your quest. Unless you're playing on the easiest difficulty, then you're free to take your time. This is one aspect of the game I wasn't thrilled with, as I've never been a fan of arbitrary time limits in games. They seldom do anything to enhance gameplay. I don't know about you, but I like to take my time with games exploring all they have to offer. Of course, what would any self-respecting fantasy game be without some combat, and Roadwarden is no exception. Combat is handled on a dice roll RNG system, but unlike other games where combat is actively encouraged, in Roadwarden it's probably best avoided, or at least seen as a last resort. Combat is a resource-heavy, risk-filled activity which can have dire consequences for you and the outcome of your quest, so it's not to be taken lightly. Your best options are to find alternatives like stealth, diplomacy, or running like a dog chasing a squirrel. I actually really liked this approach to confrontation. As a gamer, avoiding combat is an alien concept, so it's quite refreshing to think of ways around it for a change. The gameplay on offer in Roadwarden is certainly not going to be for everyone. It's more akin to reading a good book than it is to playing a video game. However, it offers a truly unique and captivating experience that seamlessly blends elements of text-based adventures, classic RPGs and survival mechanics into a cohesive and memorable journey. Roadwarden gets 22 out of 25 for gameplay. Visually, Roadwarden relies on an isometric pixel art representation of your surroundings. Of course, being a text-based game, the graphics are mainly static, with the odd animation thrown in to reveal parts of an area you've just uncovered. The sepia-toned colour palette helps build atmosphere and works really well coupled with the story. On a more practical note, I also found the colour scheme to be easy on the eye, as you'll be looking at the same image for extended periods. The simplistic nature of the game's visuals also means the game's performance is rock solid, as it should be, as it's basically a collection of static images. Of course, in a game like this, the UI has to be good, as you'll be spending a lot of time using it, and I'm glad to say it is. Text is nice and large, and the font used is clear and readable. Items in your inventory all get a nice hand-drawn pixel art tile depicting what they are. Everything is clear, clean and nicely presented, just as it should be. Roadwarden doesn't rely on flashy 3D wizardry, instead it embraces minimalism to let your imagination run wild. The environments, misty moors, candlelit inns and shadowy forest paths ooze moody charm. It's like reading a graphic novel, but one that slowly sinks into your soul. Graphics scores 21 out of 25. The audio in Roadwarden is excellent. The game is all about atmosphere and immersion, and to that end the music and sound effects complete their mission successfully. Music sets the scene beautifully with tunes that whisper to the player rather than shout. As the game knows where the player is at all times, it means music is always fitting to what's going on at that particular moment. Sound effects are also handled well, with great use of spatial audio planting you right in the middle of events. The audio in Roadwarden rarely annoys or disappoints, and scores 23 out of 25. Roadwarden is not the longest of games, coming in around the 12-hour mark for a straight playthrough, and closer to 20 if you want to do some side quests. However, the replayability is high, with different endings and lots of different dialogue options and quest routes that you can take, coupled with 3 different classes that all play slightly differently, and you have potential for a lot of gaming. The full retail price of the game offers decent levels of value as it is, but if you shop around you can pick up Roadwarden for next to nothing. I paid a grand total of 49 pence for my copy, which is roughly 70 US cents. The play hour to price ratio is off the scale for that money. If you're on the fence about text-based games, then at this price point it might convince you to give it a try. Value scores 24 out of 25. Roadwarden is a deep, rewarding adventure set in a dark fantasy world created by your own imagination. It's a unique experience that rewards patience and prudent decision making. It's not going to be for everyone, and frankly I didn't think it would be for me, but after chucking on some headphones, turning off the lights and immersing myself in this beautifully crafted world, I was hooked. Overall, Roadwarden scores 90 out of 100. thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, please give that like button a click, subscribe for more deep dives, and let me know in the comments below if you're planning on picking up Roadwarden.